Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Saturday, October 19th, 2024, and today we are going to be talking about the Kamala Harris campaign and their priorities in the final 17 days between now and November 5th, as they have to prioritize the time of the vice president and her running mate as they go from state to state, from fundraiser to fundraiser, from event to event, to speech to speech. They are focusing and narrowing in on what we dub to be the Rust Belt, the competitive states of Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. And this week is actually wrapping up a very big blitz of the blue wall states from Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. They are focusing and have been focusing on these battleground states in particular, and we'll talk about why that might be. But first, to orient us again as to what we've actually seen from the Harris campaign, again, it has all come down to these states in particular. We've seen a tweet out here talking about this schedule of Kamala Harris's campaign. Now, this is something that has already passed. This was the schedule that was released late on Sunday evening for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday for the schedule of Harris and Walz. So these are things that reporters typically get, that surrogates typically get, so people know where they're going to be, how they're going to do things, so they can get people coming to rallies. All these things, right, take a lot of time. There's always this, public tracking of where the vice president is and Tim Walz is. And so, we're going to be looking at all of them and really just capturing it in that this is really this very massive intentional effort to focus on the battleground states in the Rust Belt. And we can see it pretty clear as day. On Monday, Kamala Harris visited Erie, Pennsylvania, and we saw that Tim Walz was in Wisconsin, 2 different campaign stops there. And Tuesday, Harris was in Michigan, Walz was in Pennsylvania. On Wednesday, Harris was in Pennsylvania. On Thursday, Harris was in Wisconsin, across the state 3 different times. Tim Walz was over in North Carolina, pretty big state there for Democrats, but again, first time we're stepping out of the Rust Belt and 4 days of campaign stops. Then on Friday, Kamala Harris was back in Michigan, and then she did a bunch of stops all across the state. On Saturday today, Kamala Harris made a stop in Detroit. She's doing another one in Atlanta, Georgia. Again, the only state besides North Carolina mentioned so far that extends beyond the Rust Belt, and then Tim Walz is campaigning in Nebraska's 2nd District. And so there is very clearly, from Michigan to Wisconsin to Pennsylvania to Michigan to Wisconsin to Pennsylvania, an intentional effort here from the Democratic ticket to focus on the Rust Belt states. Despite Kamala Harris spending this time, this is an article from September, but it's as true it is today, you can see that she spends time in some other states, but the priority really is honing into those battleground states, the blue wall, as it was dubbed, for every election from 1992 onward until Donald Trump broke down the blue wall and flipped all 3 states to the Republican Party. They voted together back again in 2020 for Biden. This time, the Harris campaign is looking at it and saying, we need those states. And in terms of urgency as to why they might need them, let's take a look at our electoral map and what it looks like. I'm not going to spend time focusing on margins here. We're just going to go ahead and characterize all of the states that we know how they're going to go as safe. Don't need to spend time or waste our time right here. Main second would be safe for the Republicans. I'm just going to fill in all of the non-safe states, all the non-swing states, just would help orient us a little bit better. So bear with me as I get through it. Alaska, Florida, D.C. should be blue. Nebraska should be red. Nebraska's 2nd should be blue, and Ohio should be red. So this is what we are typically working with. 7 battleground states here, but I want us to take a look. Hypothetically, should Donald Trump win Nevada, what would happen? Donald Trump would be at 225. Should Donald Trump win Arizona, where would he be? 236. This would be a flip from 2020. Same thing with Nevada. What would happen in North Carolina? Donald Trump would be at 252. And what would happen in the state of Georgia? It would be at 268. In the Rust Belt states, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, what if Kamala Harris wins them? 10 brings her to 236. 15 brings her to 251. And 19, guess what? Brings her to 270 electoral votes. 270 electoral votes for Vice President Harris off of just winning the blue wall alone. Forget Ohio, forget Iowa, states that used to be swing states that the campaign reasonably is not investing in. But forget states like Texas, for instance. Forget North Carolina. Forget Florida. Forget Georgia. Forget Arizona. Forget Nevada, even, which hasn't gone to a Republican since George W. Bush. You are seeing that, many states could go to Donald Trump and Kamala Harris could still win the election. How? Because these Rust Belt states come in, they fill in this gap here, and they give Kamala Harris the advantage. 270 electoral votes to be exact, to Donald Trump's 268. And of the states that she is most likely to win in, this strategy seems to be paying off. This intentionality behind where she's going, how often she's going, and which, parts of the states is she going in, very clearly seems to have paid off. And you can see it even in the forecast. Because a state like Arizona gives Donald Trump a 63% chance of victory. A state like North Carolina gives Donald Trump a 58% chance of victory. A state like Georgia gives Donald Trump a 63% chance of victory. North Carolina, Trump 58, Georgia, Trump 63, Arizona, Trump 63. All around, good news for the former president. But then you head over to the Rust Belt. Pennsylvania is a toss-up, but Kamala Harris is faring a lot better there than in any of the states I've mentioned thus far. In Wisconsin, Kamala Harris has the advantage, 51-49. Not great, but certainly better than being down 20 points. Michigan, 53-47. Again, not amazing for the Democratic ticket, but certainly a lot closer and not without reason. These states in particular have received massive amounts of spending, time, organizing, campaign stops. The Harris campaign knows that their pathway to 270 directly lies within the Rust Belt, directly lies within these states that make or break an election. And you can see it not only on 538 in terms of Kamala Harris's highest electoral odds, you can see it on places like Polymarket, where Elon Musk recently dumped in a number of Republicans here, which has skewed the average. But I will say, based on the 538 forecast, it makes sense Donald Trump is up. It does not make sense that he's up 20 points. I've seen people like Charlie Kirk tweet this out like this is some sort of forecasting model. It absolutely is not. It's a political betting market, which before we saw this Elon Musk and, hyper right wing shoving in of $750 million into the market in the final, in the past 2 weeks, I would otherwise say that only those who seek out political betting typically are those who are more nonpartisan about it, who are willing to spend their money, without it being aimless. And now we're starting to see that money being aimlessly spent. Some of these, new people are investing that, Donald Trump's going to win New York and shock us all, and is wasting hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars trying to claim that they are investing in the right choice because they believe and they know it's going to go one way. It's not going to go that way that they think. But anyways, back to this point when we're looking at these states, right? Georgia, Donald Trump 65% chance. North Carolina, Donald Trump 66% chance. Arizona, Donald Trump 70% chance. But look at Pennsylvania. Donald Trump might have the upper hand, but it's less than 60. It's 57-43. Wisconsin, Donald Trump might have the upper hand, but it's less than that. It's 56-44. Michigan, Donald Trump might have the upper hand, but it's 55-45. And while we aren't here to say that Kamala Harris is guaranteed to win all three of the Rust Belt states, even by this metric, which already skews very heavily to the right, she has better odds at those three Rust Belt states than any other state that I've mentioned. And Nevada's sort of a tricky one in that, Donald Trump and Kamala Harris have had surprisingly strong numbers for the Democratic ticket, strong numbers for Democrats despite years and years of underestimation of Democratic support. They actually are looking at this and saying, okay, maybe we're in a fine position. We need to have work to do very clearly, need to organize and mobilize our base, but it's not looking as bad as it looked in years prior. And if it's still continuing to underperform and predict Democratic support, that maybe that's overall a good thing for the Harris campaign. But again, looking at these states, it is standard convention that what happens in the Rust Belt dictates our nation. Forget all the other battlegrounds. It is these that matter the most. And now that Kamala Harris is focusing on winning disaffected Republicans, people like those who voted for Nikki Haley or Ron DeSantis or anybody who was the anti-Trump that just at heart is a conservative and a Republican but can't stomach voting for the former president. She is trying to rope them in, and they actually do make a difference. We saw it happen in Arizona. When Kari Lake disrespected John McCain, we saw many of the McCain Republicans who might not have told the pollsters, were unwilling to say to the pollsters or support publicly Katie Hobbs, but at the ballot box, quietly and in secret, they took advantage of that, and they voted for Katie Hobbs. Kamala Harris has said, multiple times that she will appoint a Republican to her cabinet, that she will have a bipartisan council of members to provide policy recommendations and feedback on her administration. Those are things that are pretty good, pretty good to think about when it comes down to the issue of bipartisanship. A Democrat with a Republican in the cabinet, Democrats and Republicans working together to try to say this could do better, this could, be changed. All of that comes across as good, and I do think many independent voters have actually been warming up to it. Been saying, okay, now you're starting to win me over because you're speaking my language. The average voter in America leans towards the center. We can see that based on party registration, based on political beliefs, and that's why Kamala Harris has to do everything she can in order to win some of these voters. But specific to the Rust Belt, you see that her strength here, one, is a combined with the fact that she is doing numerous rallies there, a lot of surrogate campaigning, on the ground work, fundraising, expenditures in the states. I mean, they are spending more in these three states than any of the other battlegrounds. There's more money being spent, in Pennsylvania than there is in Georgia. More money being spent in Pennsylvania than in any other state across the country on both sides of the aisle. And so this intentionality behind where the money goes and how it's spent and where it's spent absolutely makes a difference and contributes to our understanding of where Harris's campaign is really unveiling their strategy. Because it isn't Kamala Harris who's handpicking and saying, let me look at this electoral map and I want to go here. It's her campaign managers. It's people, all across the board, ranging from Jen O'Malley Dillon, who is the top taking, you're talking top one of those top people, super senior advisor, very big for Biden campaign, running Kamala Harris's campaign. All the way down to people who are just looking at it from a genuine perspective of where can Kamala Harris win the most? Where can we sway the most voters? Swing state coordinators, right? Field organizers who are seeing things on the ground saying we need some support here. We need a rally in Detroit. We need a rally in Lansing. All of these things, right? Those are the people that are directing, and all of them are communicating with these top people across the campaign and saying, focus on the Rust Belt. And that's what they're doing. They're doing it because the math plays out. To provide you another scenario, just another thing to engage with, if you were to flip the things around, let's take away these 3 states and give them to Donald Trump. Let's try to chip down his lead by looking at these states in the Sun Belt. There is a Sun Belt strategy that works, so give me some time, but let's talk about what we would look like if we were just to swap 3 states for 3 other states. North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. It doesn't bring us close enough yet. It brings Donald Trump and Kamala Harris to 269 to 269. Now, granted, if Kamala Harris is winning North Carolina, she probably is winning Nevada. But it becomes a very tricky question here. Let's say Democrats win Georgia, they win Arizona and lose the Rust Belt, win Nevada, but lose North Carolina. Donald Trump's still president. Let's say Democrats win North Carolina, but lose Nevada. They win North Carolina, they win Arizona, they win Georgia, they still lose the election. Why? Because the House of Representatives would get to vote, and even if Democrats win the House majority, they won't have the majority by states. It's a weird, convoluted system. I encourage you to go Google what happens in a 269 to 269 tie when the House of Representatives, they're the ones who have to decide how does the House of Representatives vote in that 269-269 tie, because it's not one person, one vote. It's each state gets a vote, and then the majority vote in that state counts as sort of like this mini elector that counts as one, and you need a majority. Given that Republicans typically come from these smaller states, North and South Dakota have one singular representative, all of them will vote for Trump. You're going to see North Carolina red, North Dakota red, South Dakota red, and the gag of it all is, despite the House of Representatives being this, population-style system that was meant to represent larger states versus smaller states, you're going to find that in true American democracy, every state now is equal. So California's 55-54 electoral votes would count the same of that of a vote from a representative in South Dakota. So it's really interesting. Absolutely not something that we would want to see happening, just because the outcome of it probably wouldn't be something that is, sustained across the board. People would be so confused. This would cause a lot of chaos. And I honestly do pray that we don't get to a point where there is continued election denialism, continued attacks on and assaults on the validity of our election process. Those are not things that are good at all for the American public and do no service to anybody. And so, looking at an electoral map for selfish reasons, I do not hope we're at a 269 to 269 scenario, but I do think, that's something that we can talk about because it's plausible to an extent. And so looking at these 7 battleground states, what we're finding out here is that the Rust Belt seems to be that target. Mathematically, it makes the most sense. Logistically, it makes the most sense. In terms of previous strength from the last election, it makes the most sense. Keep in mind that, Biden won Wisconsin by 0.6, but that was nothing compared to, Biden winning Georgia by 0.2 or Arizona by 0.3. Those states in particular, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, the average vote share in favor of President Biden hovers somewhere around 1.5 to 2%. That's not a bad thing for the former president or the incumbent president. And so when you're looking at, Biden's numbers doing well there, Harris's numbers are also going to have to do well in that circumstance, which is why these states tend to be the ones that are strong enough that Democrats can win them back, right? Even if Republicans won them in 2016, we have not seen a successful Republican breakthrough on a statewide level, except for an incumbent, Ron Johnson, in 2022, across these states. In 2018, Democrats won all 3 of the Senate races here by massive margins. In 2020, Democrats won the Senate race in Michigan. There was not a Senate race in Wisconsin or Pennsylvania, but Democrats won the Senate race here. They won the presidential election here. Then in 2022, even in extenuating circumstances, Wisconsin went from being what was supposed to be, a 3-4 point margin for Ron Johnson and made it less than 2 points. That's impressive. Even more impressive is John Fetterman taking a state where Republican Senator Pat Toomey was retiring from the Senate. Democrats, Republicans ran, and Democrat John Fetterman won by 5 points across the state. We are then in very interesting scenarios, very different ones. And overall here, Kamala Harris's viability in terms of how she wins the election, where she has and where she is stands to be in the best position to win, that comes down to the Rust Belt states. And so seeing it to race the White House is the only other place I would take a look at when looking at these margins here. You're looking at states like Arizona, where Donald Trump and has a 60% chance of victory. In Georgia, a 63% chance of victory. So 60, 63. North Carolina is 57. But look at the Rust Belt. Wisconsin, Kamala Harris, 54% chance. Michigan, 59% chance. Pennsylvania, 61% chance. Even Nevada, 67% chance. In that circumstance, you're at 278, to 260. Not ideal for the Republican ticket, but still something that is largely in line with this strategy that we are seeing Democrats really unpack. Democrats are making an intentional effort to get their ground game out there, their voters mobilized, right? Getting people out to vote, getting people to return their ballots, getting people to do X, Y, and Z. These are good things for Kamala Harris. These are good things for the Democratic Party at large, which is why they're investing in it too. But this focus on the Rust Belt cannot be ignored because it reveals the campaign's internal strategy of how they know how to win. And it's the exact strategy that actually was prioritized back in 2020. If you remember looking at the 2020 election forecast, I know it might have been a long time ago, but a lot of the narrative that we have even seen on places like this channel was that Democrats should start to invest elsewhere. The idea was you're already going to win the Rust Belt states. But by election day, we knew the investments in those states were going to make a difference, which is why they never let up. They never believed the data that it was going to be a blowout for Joe Biden, which is why he was continuously investing in these battleground states. 10 more million, 20 more million, 30 more million. These things happen for a reason because they're using data that the public doesn't have access to. They're seeing things that the public doesn't have access to. They are privy to conversations that the public does not have access to. And so what happens as a result? You start to read the tea leaves that the campaign puts out. That their focus is on the Rust Belt because that's where 8 out of the 9 stops are for the next week. They're focused on the Rust Belt because they're giving $10 more million to the battleground states. These are the things that matter, and these are the things that we track because they tell us a lot about the state of the race and what the Harris campaign believes to be their pathway to victory. Quite frankly, it's a smart one, but a very narrow one at that. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the top left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2024 presidential election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all tomorrow.